Welcome back to the Gentleman's Gazette. In today's video, we'll be discussing office etiquette and why it's important to maintain it, some key etiquette danger zones, and how to mitigate conflict in the workplace. The office. Fortunately or not, it's where most of us spend the majority of our waking hours. That's why it's important that you always maintain good workplace etiquette, because how you deal with your coworkers and your office environment can often make the key difference between happy and unhappy employment. So, let's get to the big question in today's video then. Why is it that office etiquette is so important? The basic answer is that with good office etiquette, everyone can be comfortable and effective in the workplace. What makes for good office etiquette then? Simply put, having good office etiquette means that you are respectful and considerate, both of your coworkers and of the overall office environment around you. Keep in mind that truly good office etiquette goes above and beyond the kinds of things that you might just find in a typical employee handbook. Therefore, good office etiquette can help you navigate those sticky interpersonal situations that lie in the area between where the handbook rules end and where basic good manners begin. Before we move on, here is one important note. Today's video is running under the assumption that your workplace is already a safe environment. If you encounter or are the subject of harassment, physical abuse, or any kind of safety consideration, know that these subjects should be taken very seriously, and that you should seek to solve them via such channels as human resources or, if necessary, by legal counsel. With that said, here are a few situations where we think you should be especially mindful of having good workplace etiquette. We're going to refer to them as our etiquette danger zones. There are three big danger zones to consider here: those dealing with noise, interpersonal interactions, and common use spaces. So first, let's start with noise. The simplest thing to cover here is having good etiquette when it comes to talking. Usually, talking too loudly or too much are the problems here. If you're unsure whether or not you're doing these things in the office, it can usually be as simple as asking one of your coworkers. A related subject here is the question of phone calls. Again, talking too loudly can be an issue, as well as discussing things over the phone that are really too personal in nature and not appropriate for a workplace environment. And of course, regarding speakerphone, just don't do it. Often the office is too public a place to have the other end of the line also audible to everyone else around you. Think about it this way. If you're talking for 20 minutes about the vacation you just took, and you're doing it so loudly that everyone on your floor can hear you, not only are you wasting your own time, but you're also probably causing several of your coworkers to be unproductive too. Of course, all of the considerations that we've outlined above are affected somewhat by the type of space you're in. That is to say, whether you have your own office, whether you're working in a cubicle, or if you're in a common space around the workplace. If you do have your own office, you've got greater leeway when it comes to your personal volume. Just remember to close the door. If you don't do this, you'll probably garner resentment from your coworkers, especially the ones in cubicles, because they don't have the luxury of closing the door, so therefore they can't ever be in a situation where they're talking as loudly as you might be. On that note, if you happen to work out of a cubicle without a door, keep your volume at a reasonable level and keep your conversations to subjects that aren't too personal. And if you're in a common space, don't take lengthy phone calls in spaces like the cafeteria. You can answer a call in these spaces to be sure, but if you sense that the call is going to go on for a while, move at your earliest convenience to a more private location where you can continue the call unencumbered. Our next danger zone deals with the question of interpersonal interaction, starting, as you might imagine, with the question of physical touch. The short answer here is just don't do it. Today's office climate, just like society as a whole, is currently undergoing a bit of a shift in how we view the nature of physical touch between people like coworkers or general acquaintances. Overall, it's always best to be reserved and considerate. One note in particular here: just declaring to others around the office that you consider yourself a hugger isn't going to cut it. Trust us when we say that everybody thinks that kind of behavior is creepy and inappropriate in general. Even if you have an acknowledged workplace relationship, keep your physical interaction to a minimum. Nobody wants or needs to be subjected to that kind of behavior in the public environment of the workplace. Next, let's discuss the issue of being passive-aggressive. The Gentleman's Gazette is headquartered in Minnesota, which you may have heard is something of a famously passive-aggressive place at times. But even if it is part of the local social culture, that's still not an excuse to be passive-aggressive within the office environment. This tactic, which includes such behaviors as saying something slightly petty to make others feel guilty, or more generally acting in an underhanded way to try and punish someone, will not only affect others in the short term, but will also affect you in the long term. Needless to say, all of these effects will be negative. Don't resort to passive-aggressive behaviors like eye-rolling, the silent treatment, stalling tactics, or sarcasm. The only thing that these kinds of behaviors are going to do is hurt your coworkers and damage your reputation in the long run. Instead, your goal here should simply be to be the bigger person and choose open and honest communication with those around you. It will work out better. Another negative type of interpersonal behavior in the office is gossiping. Gossip can sometimes be seen as a form of currency in offices because people do like to be let in on secrets, and they can feel special or privileged if they feel they know something that others don't. But this kind of behavior just leads to social stratification and will ultimately lead to infighting among coworkers, so it's best to avoid gossip. Of course, there's nothing wrong with having conversations about the latest news of the world or something like your company's latest quarterly profit margin, as long as you're discussing these topics in a measured way that isn't designed to hurt or place blame on somebody else. This ties into some of the earlier topics we've discussed. If you do happen to learn something sensitive, say for example about a death in the family of one of your coworkers, either keep it to yourself or ask the person in question if they would be comfortable with having that information shared among your coworkers. It's always best to be cautious in these situations. Overall, avoid participation in gossip, especially if you're the one spreading it, because it will come back to bite you. Again, it's just as simple as being the bigger person and choosing open and honest communication. Here's a topic related somewhat to gossip: oversharing about yourself. Your suspicious back mole, your sex life, or your overbearing mother-in-law are definitely not topics that are suitable for discussion at the office. The workplace is necessarily designed to be a professional environment, so you should keep your conversations professional. If you do have coworkers whom you consider friends and do things with them outside of work, those sorts of out-of-the-office situations are where you can feel free to have more sensitive conversations, but not while you're in the office and on the clock. This next interpersonal area is one that becomes more important with every passing day in our increasingly fast-paced business society: timeliness. In short, just show up on time. If you're a person who's chronically late, you'll develop a reputation as someone who doesn't take their job responsibilities seriously. Also, it's important to remember that punctuality is about respecting other people's time as well as your own. Other people have things they need to do and places they need to be, so if everyone's on time, things will go more smoothly. In addition to not arriving late, don't let meetings or other types of gatherings go on past their allotted time if you can help it. Of course, sometimes meetings will run a little late, but for the most part, it's important that everyone try to be efficient because that way everyone will ultimately be more productive. Also on the topic of respecting your coworkers' time is interrupting. Often these sorts of things begin with the famous phrase, "Hey, do you have a minute?" and then proceed to go on for another 45 minutes. Interruptions are disruptive to everyone, including the interrupter, so it's important to keep them to a necessary minimum. A final area here about efficiency: don't waste your own time by loitering or hovering in certain areas of the office. For example, if you need something from a coworker, but you find that they're on the phone when you get to them, don't stand around behind them waiting for them to finish their call. Just come back a little bit later. Similarly, if you need to talk to somebody but you find that they're already engaged in conversation with someone else, don't stand around eavesdropping. Just go work on something else for a time and come back. Next, let's talk about office events. In short, you should always try to attend them when you're able. Of course, missing out every once in a while is certainly fine, but you don't want to develop a reputation as somebody who's always too important or too busy to participate in office events. Overall, you want to be seen as a team player within your office. To be clear, most of the situations we're talking about here apply to events that take place within the workplace. You have a little bit more leeway with out-of-the-office events like happy hour because they're usually not required, but you should still make an effort to attend these sorts of things when you can. Be social, be a team player. Here's a quick note on the quintessential form of office communication: email. In general, put some effort into your emails. This means trying for proper spelling, punctuation, grammar, etc. Again, this goes back to the topic of professionalism. Even if you've got all of your spelling and grammar down, remember too that you shouldn't be using an email as a chance to write the next great American novel. Keep things brief, be concise, and use only the information that's absolutely necessary. That way, everyone will get the message, but they can continue working efficiently. Our final section of interpersonal advice here has to do with illness. In short, are you sick? If so, you shouldn't be in the office. A tiny sniffle or two can be all right, of course, but if you are sick enough that it's constantly on your mind, chances are you're probably contagious, and besides, you're going to be less productive anyway. If your company offers sick time or the option to work from home, take advantage of it. It's going to be the best course of action for everybody involved. Now, on to our last big etiquette danger zone: common use spaces. The biggest issue with this type of danger zone is usually the question of overall cleanliness. Let's start here by talking about the office kitchen or break room. In short, keep things clean. If you make a mess, clean it up. It's that simple. And yes, cleaning up the messes you make is in fact your job, not the custodian's or your assistant's. If you're a mature enough person to be a member of the workforce to begin with, you should be a mature enough person to clean up your own messes. Next, be mindful of community resources. For example, don't take the last cup of coffee without making another pot afterward. It's important that you remember to pay it forward. The question of food can often be a little bit more tricky in this regard, but if food is communal, just take a reasonable portion and don't make a mess. Those two factors combined should be enough to toe the etiquette line most often. We've all seen the plate of food in the office break room with one little scrap left on it because nobody wanted to be the person to take the last little piece. But think about it this way. The food was brought into the office to be eaten. So, as long as you haven't over-gorged yourself on too much food already, you shouldn't feel guilty about taking the last piece if you happen upon the food when that's all that's left. Finally, a note on one more communal space: the parking lot. In short, don't take up more than one parking space because everyone is going to think you're a jerk if you do, and honestly, it's just not respectful behavior. Park efficiently and keep your vehicle inside one space. Alright, Now that we've covered all of our etiquette danger zones, let's get down to the question of how to deal with conflict in the workplace when it comes to etiquette offenders. Of course, you're not perfect and neither is anyone else, and it's unreasonable to expect perfection from anyone, including yourself. However, if there is someone in your workplace who's consistently breaking the rules of good office etiquette, it can lead to a demoralized and unproductive workplace, and it should be dealt with. So, the simplest way to proceed then in these kinds of situations is calmly and rationally, personally and in private if you can help it, and directly. To make this kind of interaction simple, use the following template. Make sure to use the person's name and simply state the offending behavior that's going on and the outcome that has resulted from this behavior. Then, respectfully ask the person in question if they can do something to change the behavior in question. Here's an example. Hey Bill, we've noticed recently that you've been taking a lot of your calls on speakerphone, and we find that it's been a little disruptive to people around you. If it's okay, do you think you could maybe take your calls in a private space or just turn the speakerphone off in the future? In the moment, of course, there are two broad categories of possible reactions. The first is easier, apologetic. That's when the person in question apologizes for the behavior and says that they'll commit to doing better in the future. If this happens, of course, that's the easiest road for all parties, and you hopefully won't have to worry about things continuing. The other category of reaction, then, is the defensive reaction. This is where the person in question rejects the notion that they have a problem. If this happens and the conflict isn't getting resolved, it might be a good time to enlist a manager's help. Better yet, if you yourself are the manager and you see this type of reaction occurring between coworkers, use your power to diffuse the situation so things can be resolved calmly. In conclusion, if you follow all of the advice we've put forward here today, you should hopefully be seen by your coworkers and your superiors as someone who's cooperative and a valued member of the company. So, what did you think of our list? Were there any etiquette tips for the workplace that you think we forgot to mention? If so, let us know in the comments section below. Also, be sure to check out our video playlist on different etiquette situations here. And as always, a final note to subscribe to the channel so videos like these can come straight to your inbox. In today's video, I'm wearing what could probably be considered a typical business casual outfit. On that note, if you'd like to see some other suggestions for business casual outfit ideas, you can check out our previous video here. My shirt is lilac in color, and it features a small houndstooth pattern, which we could call puppy tooth. It has French cuffs, but I've got them configured in a barrel cuff style today to accommodate the sleeves of my sweater. Speaking of the sweater, it's a cardigan style and a nylon wool blend, and it's in sort of a muted gray-brown color. My tie is a blend of wool, cotton, and cashmere in a dark plum color, and it also features a faint houndstooth or puppy tooth pattern. Even though it's at roughly the same scale as the pattern on my shirt, the pattern on the tie is muted enough that it almost appears as a solid from a distance, and the plum color picks up some of the brown tones of the sweater. That's why I decided to wear all three pieces together. My cufflinks are plain silver in color, and they feature a relatively simple design. I don't remember the exact materials of construction, but as you can see, I'm not really wearing them to be seen today anyway, as to how I've constructed my cuffs and how I'm wearing the sweater. My pants and socks are both simple black in color, and my shoes, which you've seen a few times before by now, are black cap-toed Darbies.